And sisters, today I am going to reflect on St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, verses 17 to 37. Jesus fulfills the law. In this Gospel passage from Matthew 5:17 to 37, Jesus states the purpose of his coming into this world, which is to fulfill the law and the prophets and not to abolish them. I would like to begin this reflection on Jesus fulfills the law with a heartwarming story of a fiery crash. A neighbor, his wife and his friend and girlfriend and his friend's wife were at the neighbor's house. The two men both got into arguments with their wives and decided to go out drinking down the street. A few hours later, I am woken up by my sister banging on my bedroom door. I was staying with them at the time. Because the car crashed doing probably 80 in a 25 mph right next to our home. I jumped out of bed and got outside to see the neighbor's car crashed into a tree and two men trapped inside. The tree the car hit stopped them from ramming into another neighbor's house, and they hit it so hard that the battery was in the street after hours. Their car caught fire and we had to watch them burn to death. Still see it and smell it every now and then when trying to sleep. The message of this story is that anger can destroy our peace of mind and lead us to do things which we will regret later on. In this context, what Jesus has said about anger holds true. Namely, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. In the Gospel passage from Matthew 5:17 to 20, Jesus tells his disciples, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. By these words, what Jesus means is that he is not going to do away with the principles and the teachings of the law or the principles and the teachings of the prophets, but he is going to fulfill them, which means that he is going to make the people to understand the true meaning of those principles and teachings and make the people aware of the content demands made by those principles and teachings. Jesus fulfills the law. The clarification of Jesus of the key points regarding his mission of fulfilling the law. He clarifies the following key points. First, the permanency of the law. Jesus makes it clear to the disciples that the law and the teachings of the prophets are permanent. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Matthew 5:18. Jesus makes it clear to the people that the law will remain intact till Jesus accomplishes his mission of fulfilling the law. Therefore, Jesus wants us to believe in the permanency of the law, which means two things. First, we need to always follow the law accepting all the hardships and sacrifices it entails. Secondly, we need to always teach others regarding the permanency of the law. Second principle, the reward and the punishment. Jesus promises a reward for those who practice and teach the law to the people and warns of the punishment to those who set aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly. First, whoever practices and teaches those commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus exhorts his disciples to practice and teach the people the principles and teachings of the law. And when they do that, they will be rewarded by being called great in the kingdom of heaven. Secondly, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Mathew 5:19. Jesus warns that those who set aside one of the least of these commands and teach others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Third principle, true righteousness. Jesus tells the people that the righteousness of the Pharisees and the teachers is false and superficial. It is only for a show, and they are not at all sincere in following the true spirit of the law and the teachings of the prophets. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Mathew 5:19. The fulfillment of the law and the teachings of the prophets by Jesus. Jesus takes the principles and the teachings of the law and the prophets one by one and shows the true meaning and significance of those principles and teachings which the Pharisees and the teachers of the law had obliterated for their own benefit and for their selfish reasons. And this is the reason why Jesus tells his disciples, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Mathew 5:19. In other words, what Jesus is telling his disciples is that they should give up following the Pharisees and the teachers of the law and follow the new principles and teachings Jesus is giving to them. Now we shall see what the new teaching Jesus is giving with regards to the law and the teachings of the prophets by taking those teachings one by one. First, murder. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not commit murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. What Jesus is telling his disciples is that though the actual killing of a person or committing a murder is a big sin against the teachings of Jesus, even getting angry with someone or calling one's brother or sister fool will be subject to judgment like a murderer. Similarly, one who calls somebody Raka is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. In other words, Jesus is going beyond the letter of the law and encountering the real meaning behind his teaching, and that is this. Though the external acts are important and subject to judgment, the intention behind uttering these words is more important, and are subject to judgment just as the actions are. Therefore, Jesus wants us to avoid uttering the words which are improper, just as we have to avoid murdering someone. Second, reconciliation. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, there remember that your brother or sister has something against you. Leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them. Then come after and offer your gift. Mathew 5:23 to 24. Jesus wants his disciples to quickly reconcile with their enemies by taking the first step even when they are not the offenders. This is a new teaching which is diametrically opposed or against the teaching of the law and the Pharisees, who would not advise the people to take the first step towards reconciliation. Third, adultery. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Matthew 5:27 to 30. Here too, Jesus is going beyond the mere actions and probes into the intention of the people, which makes them to take any drastic action. He wants us to keep our intentions pure and not to think of a woman as an object of our sexual gratification, reducing the human worth of that particular woman who has become the object of our lust. Fourth, divorce. It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Matthew 5:31 to 32. Here Jesus is telling his disciples that the divorce is allowed only for one reason, and that is the sexual immorality. But Jesus changes the teachings of the law and the prophets by restricting divorce only for the sexual immorality. In fact, Jesus wants his disciples not to think of divorce at all and to keep the unity and oneness of the marriage intact. Oaths. Again, we have heard that it was said to the people long ago, "Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made." But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Matthew 5:33 to 37. Here Jesus tells his disciples and the people that they need to fulfill the oaths that they have taken. But at the same time, he is advising them not to take oath at all. He wants his disciples and the people to respond to any query or any request only by saying yes or no, and anything more is from the evil one. What Jesus means to say is that we need not waste words in explaining our position, our way of thinking, or taking decisions, or our decisions and actions to anybody. What we need to do instead is to do what is right according to the teachings of Jesus, and the rest will take care of itself. All this teaching about murder, adultery, divorce, and oaths point to the new teaching of Jesus regarding all the other things in life which is replacing by fulfilling the Jewish law and teaching of the prophets. So from now on, we need to follow this new teaching of Jesus. The new teaching of Jesus is based on love. This new teaching of Jesus is based on the central principle of his teaching, namely the commandment to love God and to love the neighbors. Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." Matthew 22:34 to 40. Therefore, we need to follow the advice of Jesus and base our life on the principle of love of God and love of our neighbor. We will be the true disciples and followers of Jesus if we base our life on the principle of love of God and love of our neighbor. I would like to end my reflection on Jesus fulfills the law with the heartwarming story of Pradyumna Kumar Manandya, the famous painter who cycled for 4 months and 3 weeks, covering 4,000 miles across Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Germany, Austria, and Denmark to get to Sweden, to Charlotte to be with his wife, von Schedwin, Charlotte von Schedwin. Despite abject poverty and social stigma of his untouchable caste, Pradyumna Kumar Mahanandya earned a place as a student of the College of Art in New Delhi. Following his painting of Indira Gandhi, many people wanted to draw him, wanted him to draw them. One of those was Charlotte von Schedwin, who was traveling in India. They soon fell in love and got married. Charlotte, however, had to return home to Sweden. She offered to pay for Pradyumna's plane ticket, but he had too much pride to accept and promised he would make the money on his own. After a year, he had still not saved enough. Selling all his possessions, he made enough to buy a bicycle. He then cycled for 4 months and 3 weeks, covering 4,000 miles across Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Germany, Austria, and Denmark to go to Sweden, to get into Sweden. They are still happily married 40 years later and live in Sweden with their 2 children. Pradyumna became a well-known artist and is a cultural ambassador. When asked about his arduous journey, his reply was, "I did what I had to. I had no money, but I had to meet her. I was cycling for love, but never loved cycling. It was simple, because I loved her." The message of the story is that the word love and the expression "I love you" can mean nothing and could prove to be empty words if they are not accompanied by the sacrifices entailed in the reality of love. When we love somebody, we have to undergo many hardships and make innumerable sacrifices to fulfill the demands of love. The story of the love between Pradyumna Kumar Mahanandya and Charlotte von Schedwin, it is clearly evident that both of them had to undergo many hardships and make innumerable sacrifices to fulfill their love, such as Charlotte von Schedwin had to leave her husband behind in India and go back to her country, Sweden, and Pradyumna Kumar Mahanandya had to cycle for 4 months and 3 weeks, covering 4,000 miles across Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Germany, Austria, and Denmark to get to Sweden. This beautiful story also proves the importance and benefit of keeping the oath, the promise. The husband in the story kept his promise and the oath taken at the time of marriage to be with his wife for life and share his life with her entirely with its joys and sorrows. Dear friends, thank you for watching my video and listening to my reflection with such care and love. I would be happy to hear your comments and suggestions. You may contact me on WhatsApp or by phone at 7030447934. I invite you to join my WhatsApp channel, Father Patrick Endowed Life Sampanna Jivan, where I share my reflections, videos on biblical and psycho-spiritual themes, daily greetings and selected inspiring content. Please also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Father Dr. Patrick D'Souza, and visit my website https://worldofemotions.in, where you can freely download my book Treasures of Human Personhood in a book and audiobook formats. You can also read my reflections and watch my videos on Facebook. Kindly share this reflection and the channel details with your friends and contacts. You are most welcome to contact me for personal guidance. Catholic friends who wish to make a confession may also approach me. Now my prayer for you. May God bless you and your families with health, happiness and holiness, and fulfill all your dreams according to His will. Amen. Thank you.